Hello, everyone, and it's great to see you today. Hi, Yasmin. Hi, Susana.
Hi, how's it
Hi,
going?
yeah.
How are you doing?
Yeah, doing good, thank you.
I'm really excited for today's event. So, I think usually we wait for a couple of minutes in order for everyone to join us. But today I want us to be really strict and be on schedule. So I think I should share my screen and start with a brief intro. Um, and we can talk about. So, can you see my screen?
Not yet.
Now we can.
Okay, great. So let's start again. So this is our ninth event for the Product 360 series. Obviously inspired by Orpheum. This is an event series that aims at bringing together all the knowledge from product, UX, design teams, data, engineering, and we aim to bring under the same roof all these people from various departments and share experiences and best practices from global product leaders like today, Yasmin and Susana. Uh, Today we have two female awarded product leaders, highly respected from the product community, and we're very fortunate for that. Before moving on and giving Yasmin and Susana the room to introduce themselves, I just wanted to spend some minutes in order to talk about the Product 360 community. So, if you have followed us in the past and if you have watched our previous sessions, I'm pretty sure you already know this. But for any newcomers, we are a product community. We plan to organize many events, conferences for the next months. So we try to be consistent every month. At least we have one event. Um, Up until this point, our main sponsor is Orpheum, and our supporters are Digital Gira's Product Community Greece, Techstars, Startup Digest Athens, and Greek Tech. Um, and obviously, you can subscribe to our YouTube channel to get all the previous recordings. And today's recording, it will be uploaded tomorrow. You can follow our LinkedIn and Meetup pages in order to get all our latest updates. And as you already know, and this is why we're doing it, because this is an interactive community, you can always send your questions, and we are more than happy to get your comments and questions and basically make the conversation even spicier. So, without further ado, I would like Yasmin to introduce herself, talk about her work at Impala. Yasmin?
Hey everyone, my name's Yasmin. Really pleased to be here. So thank you, Sakis, for inviting me. I'm a product director at Impala. I've been at Impala for almost 2 years now, and in general, my whole career has been revolved around tech startups. I've been in tech startups for about 10 years, with the last 5 years transitioning fully into product management. I manage 3 other product managers at the moment, and in my company, we have about 10 product managers in total. On the side, I'm really passionate about getting more people into product specifically. So you might see me running a few product courses, of which I have one straight after this event as well that I'll be
Amazing.
teaching. So yeah, really pleased to be here. Thank you.
It's a pretty busy day for you, Yasmin. Susana?
Sure. So my name's Susana. I've been in product my whole career, unlike Yasmin, who's done a lot of cool and exciting stuff before going into product. I'm at Onfido, been there for the last 5 years, also director of product. Recently, I've had a baby, so I'm currently on maternity leave. And during that time, I started a product management coaching business. So I'm working with founders and product execs as well as individual product managers to get them to be really damn awesome at product. So I'm excited to be here and talk about product leadership.
Great. So I think we can start directly with the questions. So before going quite deep into how a product manager can grow and become basically a product leader, let's start with defining product leadership. So Yasmin, Susana, what is product leadership for you?
You
Yasmin?
going first?
Yeah, I can go first. So to me, product leadership it's a combination of owning product strategy, owning your teaming, syncing with all the other kind of relevant departments. That's usually typically sales, marketing, any kind of GTM departments as well, and ultimately motivating your team. So enabling them and empowering them to understand what it is that they need to work on short term, medium term, and long term. One thing I want to note as well is that product leadership doesn't automatically mean that you have people directly that you're managing as well, but more often than not, that does what it mean. Sorry, that does mean that you do have PM reports or some form of reports as well. So to me, the kind of product leadership encompasses almost anything to do with providing the direction for your team.
I've got a similar point of view. I think for me, it's where you have the biggest leverage changes. So as an individual contributor, you're primarily spending time with your cross-functional team to solve customer problems. And as a leader, you're essentially solving customer problems through the leverage of your teams. So you're essentially making your PMs that report to you as amazing as they can be and as aligned as they can be to the strategy in order to get that multiplier effect of multiple people all working in the same direction and trying to solve important problems for the customer.
Great. And can you share some basically insights on how product leadership is considered at Impala or on Fido? So the structure of the organization.
Sure. So at Onfido, we actually have a chief product officer. So that is someone that sits on the exec team and reports to the CPO that looks after the whole portfolio of products and is looking at not only the strategy for now, but like 5, 10 years, etc. And then we have a couple of VPs that take on different parts of the portfolio. And then we have directors and senior directors and group product managers. Onfido is like 600, 700 people now. So it's a little bit big. But yeah, the first line management type role that you might take at Onfido is a group product manager, which essentially is a player coach kind of role where you're essentially still doing individual contributor work, but you manage maybe 1 or 2 PMs. And then if that's something that you like and that you're good at, you could get promoted to director. But if you decide that actually you don't really like managing people, you could go and be like the equivalent of a group PM would be a staff or a principal product manager. So that's the individual contributor track.
And before moving to Yasmin, so how many people are in the product team of on Fido, Susana?
I've lost count because, as I said, as I'm on mat leave, but I would say easily 15, even more people. And we also have supporting functions that are kind of adjacent. So we have a chief strategy officer that has their own strategy team, and that's primarily focused on business strategy. And then we also have program management that's about like non-product initiatives that span across loads of teams. Like, for example, complying with GDPR was a huge effort, like privacy effort, things that are not directly building a product, but like compliance issues. And that reports into the CTO. So yeah, very large, very large.
Great. Yasmin?
Yeah, not too dissimilar actually. So we have a CPO who kind of looks at long-term vision and strategy over the kind of like 2, 5, 10 year horizon. We then have a head of product and roles that we will have in future, a VP of product as well. Although we don't have that at the moment. You have product directors, and where you can take the step into line management is actually a little bit earlier than group PM. So we do it at senior PM. So you can take one of two options, or both even actually. So one is to take on two teams instead of one team, as in scrum teams, and then also take on an associate PM as well when you become a senior PM. And then the kind of level up from there is product director, where typically you're expected to kind of move away from the day-to-day product management and have between 3 to 5 reports.
Do you happen to have a product ops team?
We have a product operations person. It's not necessarily its own team. It sits within product, and always will continue to, because they obviously work extremely closely with us as well as other departments. So for now, we have one product operations person.
Yeah, we have quite a large product operations team. And then we also have an analytics functions and business intelligence, data science, and our product is exceptionally data heavy. So there's many layers of not only building the algorithms, but also getting all the data that we need to report on that, and then getting insights and structure, and that goes more into the ops side.
Yes, heavily involved in the product. Could you please share some of the responsibilities that you have as a product leader? Susana, would you like to go first here?
Sure. I think this also plays a little bit into the work I've been doing as a coach. Like, when you stop being a PM and you start having a team of PMs reporting to you, like, the number one job is getting those people to be really damn good. And that means you need to spend a lot of time coaching them and figuring out, okay, well, this person's really good at strategy. Actually, they don't come from a technical background. How do I get them to be really good at technical stuff? Or this person is an amazing visionary, but they're terrible on stage. Like, how do I make them really good and compelling at selling a vision? So coaching your team to me is the number one. And the second thing is everything that comes with like managing people. So like, how are you going to recruit people? How are you going to onboard them? How are you going to make sure that like you do their performance reviews and give feedback? And how do you retain that talent? How do you make sure that if they get a better job offer somewhere else, like you have a counter proposition that they're really engaged, they love working here? And then if you're really good as a manager, you're going to be promoting people quite often. So making sure that that happens. And occasionally you might mishire, or the person might no longer be in a position where they're performing really well, or somehow that relationship needs to be terminated. So that's also part of the role.
It happens.
Yeah, it does happen. And it's important that you look after that person, right? Like, that you help them identify what they're actually really good at, and maybe like do some introductions so that they can go onto a role where they're really successful, maybe within the company, maybe outside the company. And then a big part of it is also product vision and strategy, depending on how up you are in the org. And just being a bit of a glue, right? Like finding your counterparts within engineering and design and the rest of the business that are at director or VP level, and making sure like all the ways in which things get done continue to scale as the company gets larger. So that's what I would say operations at a product leader level is.
Yasmin, anything to add here?
Very similar again. I would say I like to kind of dedicate between 40 to 60% of my time on, people management, what their professional development looks like. So I'll typically look at it almost at least every 2 months per report that I have as well. Coaching them on areas that they potentially need to upskill in, but also kind of taking that step back. And I think where we are slightly earlier stage than on Fido, we tend to change up our teams quite a lot as well. So according to the needs of the product and our customers, I will typically relook at teaming almost every 2 to 3 months as well. So that's a big part of my role. Something that we do, and also I've seen a few other companies do, for example, TrueLayer as well. When you're at that kind of PD product director level, you tend to take one kind of tactical project per quarter as well. So for example, for me, for this quarter, it's looking at what a new version of our API will look like. So the discovery of that, running some user research sessions directly with developers as well. Whereas, it could also just be, okay, well, what does potentially a new vertical look like as well for us? So it can be anything, and it's actually quite directed between myself and my manager, who's the head of product. So we kind of decide that as per quarter, although it can change, right? We might get into a mid-quarter and new information has come in, and so we change that. But I do quite like that there's always a tactical kind of project element in the background that's running. So I'd say that maybe that's something that may be slightly different from other product directors at different companies as well.
Yeah. That sounds closer to maybe like a group PM kind of scope, even though it's really targeted,
Yeah.
which is really interesting. I think one thing I did forget to mention is, as you were saying, your teams are flexible and they're reprioritized. That's the domain of team topology and goal setting, right? So making sure that the teams are getting goals for the quarter that are really aligned and that are going to be high leverage with what the strategy and product vision is. A huge part of that is going to be up to the product leader to make sure everything's cascading properly and that the teams are aligned and excited. It's so interesting to hear how you guys are like being really flexible. Like I've heard that at Revolut, oh, and you've worked at Revolut, right? Like the teams changed all the time. That's also a really interesting perspective.
Yeah, it's quite Revolut was interesting. You know, even just within the business arm, you can have up to 18 different product teams that you all work very closely with, and yeah, it's super flexible, as it should be, right? So you kind of can assume that people can move within teams as per the needs require. So when you do actually join, I would say it's very unlikely, if not highly unlikely, that you'll be put into a specific role. So you won't necessarily join, you know, as a senior product manager in onboarding. You'll just join, and then by the time that you've actually joined, something will have changed, and therefore you get assigned to a team kind of last minute, as opposed to when you sign the contract.
I think there's two schools of thought, right? Like there's going to be the long-lived product teams that want really deep domain knowledge and expertise that lasts multiple years. Like Adam Fido, I've been 5 years within the biometrics line of business. And then there's the Revolut school of thought, which is like, actually, agility is our biggest asset, and we're going to go fast, and we're going to change as we need. And I think that produces two very different profiles of very strong PMs, right, with different assets.
Absolutely.
So some really, really great points there. Yasmin, if you had to choose, which of these responsibilities will be in your top 3 list, let's say?
I think being able to provide your team with the right direction, and that means the right vision, goal setting, OKRs, North Star, whatever it is that you use at your company. Because once you have that, everything almost cascades itself down. If you have strong people who know how these frameworks work, then they can organize themselves as well. There's, you know, a balance of hand-holding versus giving autonomy, and autonomy can be reached once you've been able to provide a really clear direction and vision, and you allow people to almost slot themselves into where they think they need to in order to make that happen. And there's nothing I like more than seeing me being able to empower people to do that themselves rather than kind of dictate how it should be done as well. So I can sit here and I can say, you know, this team needs to be here, this team needs to be looking at this team needs to have 4 back-end engineers, 3 full stack and 2 front end. But ultimately, once you can kind of direct as a company and as a product team, what is needed, obviously alongside engineering and all your other counterparts as well. I think I wouldn't want to remove that, because then it would probably make my job a lot harder if I had someone else doing that. So that's kind of one main area that I would definitely want to retain. And I think the one other thing, and I guess it's almost being a bit selfish here, is I thoroughly enjoy the kind of coaching and mentoring side. So spending time with my direct reports, sharing with them elements of feedback where they could be improving, working on their professional development plan, seeing them execute on that plan as well, gives me a lot of happiness. And it's something that, you know, I deliberately took outside of my job as well, and I kind of mentor people to do that as well. So those are the areas that I wouldn't necessarily want to let go of, albeit quite selfish.
I think that's the true sign of a leader, is someone that truly loves developing people. Like I talk to a lot of PMs where like, oh, I want to be promoted. Like I think I want to be a director and whatever. And I'm like, okay, so tell me what brings you joy. And turns out they actually hate people interactions and they wouldn't love like coaching other people. And so if you're thinking about your career and what brings you joy is actually shipping stuff to market and working with engineers and all of that lovely stuff that we get as individual contributors, and you think that managing people would actually be pretty shit, then I would question whether you'd be better suited to be a principal product manager or a staff product manager. And to answer the question, I'm very, very similar. I would say that if I narrow it down, it's literally like coaching your team to be really, really good and setting effective goals that are aligned with what the company's trying to do. I think if you get those two things right, everything else kind of falls into place. But you need to love what you're doing, right? Like Yasmin was raving about how she loves it, and if you love it, you're going to be really good at it as well, or be motivated to get really good at it.
True, true. And, communicating quite clear is really important here, so everybody can be aligned. Um, I think we can move on to the next part of our questions. So before moving on to the second part, how actually a PM can grow and develop their skills and actually become a product leader, I would like to encourage, let's say, the audience to ask their questions, because once we finish the second part, then we can answer any question the audience might have. So let's move on, and let's start with the first one. So how did you break into your current product leadership role, Yasmin? And if you can, take us through that journey. So
Yeah, sure. I'll talk about the whole journey into product, because I think that there's sometimes a misunderstanding that there's one direct route into product. And as much as I would love there to be, and I get so much joy seeing, albeit a handful of companies, maybe 5, that have product management internships or grad schemes, that's not the typical route in. And I want people to be able to know that, because it's very normal that you come in through a different route. So whether that's, for me, it was operations and strategy. For other people, it can often be being in analytics. Sometimes salespeople as well, I've seen make great product managers, and even engineers themselves. So there's no direct route in. So my route in was kind of working in operations and strategy for about 5 years, and kind of half of my role, while not even realizing it, was working on internal tooling and improving that, with a couple of engineers, not many, about 2 to 3, and then it did have to be told to me. It had to be told by my boss, like, hey, you're kind of acting as a product manager, but you don't have the title or anything, and let's make it official and give you a proper team, and see how you go. And I'm really thankful for that, because it gave me the realization that there was this kind of role that I could move into and do really well in. So from there, kind of then took it, really, really tried to develop my skills in wireframing, analytics, and made it to senior PM. And then it was just a case of, I think, well, at least my route was very much, had one team that I worked with, then that grew to 2 teams that I took on, then that took to 4 teams, which I do not recommend by any means.
I'm getting anxiety just listening to what you're describing.
And then with 4 teams, it was kind of one report, and then one report came kind of 3 reports, and then it was kind of a case of, hey, well, you're doing a product director role without, again, the title, so let's give you the title. And we had that discussion, and the promotion came early this year, which I was very happy about. But again, it's not necessarily that natural kind of transition, right? Like when I came into the company, there was nothing that said, there was no framework that said, to be a product director, you need to be doing X, Y, and Z. That framework had to be made. And sometimes you'll have that framework made before you go in, and sometimes you have to kind of push for it and ask, well, what does this mean if I'm doing X, Y, and Z? Am I acting in a high position, same position, lateral position? So that was my route in. Yeah, very interested to hear Susana.
Mine is in some ways similar, in some ways the direct opposite. So I went on one of those grad schemes, even though not necessarily one of the 5 companies that you would have thought of. It was a very, very small British startup that had a grad scheme between engineering and QA and sysadmin and product and analytics, and I was supposed to rotate. So every 3 months I was supposed to rotate into another role, and then I was like, I don't want to rotate. I'm just staying in product. Thank you very much. So that was my into product, was literally, I just applied for any job in front of me, and I just happened to land this one that was for me personally, exactly what I wanted to do. And as I discovered more about product management, I was like, actually, I don't want to do anything else. This is it for me. In terms of getting into product leadership, as you said, you can get promoted because the company is growing and because you're taking on more and more responsibility. And that was very similar for me as well. It's often quite difficult to join a company without having been a leader to be in a leadership position. That often is quite rare. When hiring managers are looking for a leader, they would look for someone that already has line management responsibility. So your best bet is to try and figure out, how do I get line management responsibility within the company that I'm in right now, so that for the next role, I'm already coming in as an experienced leader, as opposed to you're a senior PM and you're just applying for senior or group product manager roles elsewhere. The other way you can get into product leadership is that you join an early stage startup as the first product manager, and you're taking a bet that eventually that company will grow and that you're in a good position to take on reports and be the VP product or whatever. So my story is a little bit of an intersection of those two. I joined Onfido when we were about 100 people, and I was the founding member of the biometrics line of business. So that line of business basically didn't exist. It was just me and one other, and a machine learning engineer. And as that line of business grew and the business grew, I hired people and grew that line of business and had more and more reports. And as Yasmin said, also got promoted into group PM and then director. So those are the two ways you can do it. Is you join an early stage company as the first product manager and then get put in a head of product or VP product, or within your company, hopefully the company is growing fast enough or the area that you're looking after is growing fast enough, and then you get people in to help you and you get promoted into that position. And then you can jump to another company as an experienced leader, as opposed to trying to do that through getting a new job.
I know it's not a question written, but so do you have to be? Do you have to have a good product leader in order to become one? Like, do you need a role model?
Such a great question. I have found that when I have really great role models, my learning journey is so much easier. Like, I've been blessed with two people that were exceptional in my career development, both at Huddle, my previous company, and at Onfido. But then I've also had leaders above me that didn't line up to what I was expecting. And it was really hard for me to see what the next step in my career could look like, because either I disagreed with their style or I couldn't quite see what their role actually was, because it wasn't very well defined. You can put in the hours and the effort and read Inspired and Empowered and all the Escaping the Build Trap awesome books. But I think if you have someone that you can go like, actually, I can be like them, that is much, much easier. Like, and even you mentioned that it just so happens that there's two female leaders here. When I was on Fido and they were going to promote me to director, I was like, oh my God, but I'm too young to be a director. Like, I don't even know what that means. What the hell? Like, and then I saw that in the strategy arm, someone had just been promoted to director, and she was also female, and she was also like leading with kind and empathetic leadership. And I was like, if she can do it, I can do it, right? So role models are such a big thing of like, can you even visualize yourself doing that job? Can you understand what that job is?
Yasmin?
Yeah, I think it would be harder to do the role without having that kind of role model, but the role model doesn't have to be specific, but it doesn't have to be your N+1, it doesn't have to be your manager necessarily. For me, it's actually one of our engineering leads, great business leader, and I mean, I'll be messaging him almost every day with a different challenge or, you know, some thoughts or feedback on anything and everything. And so it doesn't necessarily have to be a direct person within your company, but I think that is the easiest route, because it's very difficult to find. Although you might have a role model outside, you can't. It's a lot more difficult to emulate them when you're not working with them day to day and closely. So I do think it's really important to have one, or at least have someone that's kind of a visionary, so you can say, well, this is what I want to become. And at least, you know, maybe reach out to them to pick their brains on how they did it. But I would say it's quite infinitely harder to do if you're just kind of doing it by yourself and trying to self-teach yourself everything as well.
Yeah. And if I might add, one thing I've seen now that I've started this product coaching business is actually when you're the first PM in an organization reporting to a founder, sometimes you can ask, or maybe the founder will offer you some coaching externally because they don't know how to do product and they want you to be really successful. And so that can be another external support and someone that you can look and aspire to be like.
Interesting. Now, in your case, okay, the company is growing, it's going really well, and they're already good product leaders. What can you do next? Like, what's the next thing in order to grow and to develop and actually, step up? Susana?
I think that I always like to think about it in the two speeds. So there's the speed at which you are growing, and there's the speed at which the company is growing. And sometimes you have companies that are growing really fast and people that are growing just, below the company, and you're able to retain them. Sometimes companies are stagnating and you have like a superstar and that person is just not going to be able to be promoted anymore because they can't take the CEO role, right? So it's about you assessing of what speed you're growing versus the company. And then sometimes you can get promoted into a individual contributor track that is really prestigious, and you can take on the hardest and most difficult problems the company is facing. So that would be a staff PM or a principal PM or a distinguished PM, even if you go to Microsoft. That would be one way to be retained within the company. The other way is you could move within the company, stay at the same level that you're at, but move to an area that you don't have a lot of expertise in. So, for example, as Yasmin was saying, her company is very dynamic. People move a lot. So in some companies that doesn't happen, like at Onfido, it doesn't happen. So I've got a lot of expertise in ML and machine learning and biometrics, but I've got very little in the way of like customer acquisition and retention. And I don't do a lot of stuff with designers. And so one way for me to grow would be to move to a different part of the product that would really stretch another area of development for me. But at the end of the day, you need to figure out, like, am I learning here? Am I enjoying the work that I'm doing? And if it comes to a point where you really feel stuck, like, you should be looking elsewhere and seeing if there's other opportunities. But hopefully your company is growing as fast as you or faster than you, and those opportunities open up. But do be proactive with that stuff with your manager as well, and talk to them and be like, hey, this is my ambition. Like, how do I get there? What can you do to offer opportunities for me to take that on?
Great points. Yasmin?
Yeah, I think there's an element of, as an individual, you need to kind of take the onus to direct somewhat your own path as well. So I think that professional development is pretty much 60 to 70% driven by the individual, and then 20 to 30% driven by the manager in order to help them, guide them to that path. And so I think that sometimes, and quite honestly, some of the best people that you can work with are those that try to make that own path for themselves and be very clear and explicit with people around them that that's what they want as well. Because if you don't know that that's what they want, you can't help them and say, okay, well, I know that they really want to work on machine learning, and this new product that we're working on or new team that we're putting together has that element to it, and so they can excel in that area or learn in that area. Even I think it would be quite rigid of a company to say, oh, well, we've only got 2 spaces for a product director or 2 VP levels, and once they're filled, and you have to wait for someone to leave, or I don't know what the other alternative would be before
it grows and it needs another area, right? Like,
so the key that Susana has alluded to as well is that you want to be in a company that's growing, because there'll always be an element of opportunity there. But even if you are, let's say, in an area where it's not growing as much as you'd like it to, you can look to carve out those roles. I'd find it very strange if a manager, was resistant to the fact that, there wouldn't be something, whether that something is taking on extra tasks, whether that something is taking on different or extra levels of responsibility. There's always work that needs to be done. There's never a company that says, oh, we don't have anything for you, because there's no work left over or there's no tasks left.
and if they do say that, that's a warning sign that you're underperforming or they're trying to manage you out somehow.
Yeah,
that would be very bizarre.
So listen to the signs, but I think what I would always say is be explicit. So, even before you join, say in your interview, is there room for this? Can I be put on the people management track? Is there a people management track? What does the individual contributor track look like? Have understanding of whether the individual contributor track is paid the same, less, slightly less as a managerial track, and get the knowledge as much as you can, early as you can as well, so that you can craft that your own kind of domain. I think the best thing that someone can do is become known in their company for one really good thing. So whether it's, Yaz is the go-to person for kind of getting, I don't know, designing APIs in like a really great way, although that's not what I would put my name next to, but whatever it might be, get that area where you're kind of really well known for, and really excel in that as well.
Good. So imagine we have a time machine and we can go like a couple of years back when you were junior PMs. So what would you do differently? Would you make another choice, join another company? Yasmin, would you like to take this one first?
Yeah, I can take this one. I tend to take the view that I don't like to dwell too much on what I could have done differently, because I do like the path that I've taken. But if I had to, I would say there's an element here of realizing that I always gravitated towards product, no matter what role that I was in, and realizing that a bit sooner, so that I could maybe, I guess, I don't want to say unleash the product person within me, but do that a bit sooner. So there's probably an element of that. Plus, also, I think actually one thing that I've always told myself I would have liked to have done is as kind of assign myself a mentor, to have someone that maybe had done the switch that I had done previously, and was able to help guide me in that area, because that's something that I missed, or I didn't actively seek out until a while after. In which case I was already kind of mentoring people that were then doing what I had just done as well. So that's one thing that I would look at changing if I had to.
I will keep the quote by Yasmin: "Unleash the product kraken."
Yeah, that's right.
So
She didn't
Susana,
quite say kraken, but unleashing is a good verb, that's for sure. Particularly if there's joy associated with it. So for me, I think when I look back, I was blindedly lucky. Like, I landed in a company where product leaders were engaged with the product community. They were organizing product tanks. They were attending Mind the Product. They were very, very tuned in onto the latest and greatest theory on product. And I think I've seen a lot of people that just landed in companies that are frankly still attached to quite old-fashioned ways of doing product, and that really sets them back in their career, because then when they're trying to apply for a more modern company, they don't have the experience that is necessary, and so that kind of turns into a cycle of where they can only get jobs in places where product is not really a respected function, etc. So I think if I was to give myself advice, that would have counteracted the fact that I was very lucky. Like, if I had been unlucky, I think the best advice would be, there is a wealth of knowledge around product right now that is available on books. It's available on like the internet, on blog posts, etc. You can read and learn about what good product management looks like, and you can be picky with which companies you're going to apply for, particularly earlier in your career, because that's going to be formative. And so I think if you are interviewing at the moment, ask things like, how are goals set? Are you celebrating releases, or are you celebrating business outcomes? Like, what metrics are you trying to move at the moment? Is there a strategy? Like, can you articulate the strategy for me? Like, does the vision even inspire me? Like, those kinds of questions will give you a sense of whether this is a good place for you to invest your time, and whether it's going to be developing in you in the way that will hopefully have many, many years of payback over a lot of time. And, a reliable source is always Marty Kagan and Melissa Perry. Both of them will be strong people, and Mind the Product and Product Tank are also great sources of amazing content.
You cannot go wrong with Martin. Um, you mentioned something about being lucky, and I tend to have these thoughts like, is luck what drives us? Like, okay, you need to be at the right place at the right time, but if you don't have the skills, you can go up until a certain level. Um, do you think luck plays an important role in a career, in becoming a product leader?
I think it does. I think I could have easily landed in a company that was doing safe, for example. So scaled agile framework, very poorly regarded in the tech startup world at the moment. And I wouldn't have known any better whether that was good or not good. I would have just gone like, okay, this is how I do my job. Great. I think the skills that I needed to land that safe job versus the skills I needed to land a product management job in a modern a modern company would have been exactly the same. I just didn't know any better, right? So I think that's a big part, at least of where you start. But then once you are in the industry, you can be a lot more self-directed because at that point you're like, oh, okay, what I'm doing is product management. Like Yasmin was saying, someone had to tell her, this is the role you're doing. And once you have the keyword, you can use Google, right? And once you know what the thing is called, that gives you power to go and investigate and find out what is actually well regarded, who are the thought leaders, etc. And that's when you can take ownership. But before you even know what you don't know, like it's literally just luck.
Yasmin, would you like to add any comments here?
Yeah, I think there's an element of luck all the time, and a lot of that is to do with being in the right stage of a company at the right time, with the right growth, with the right position for you. So there's a lot of different variables that have to work there all at the same time. But it also depends on what you're optimizing for, right? So that assumes that potentially you want to be in that kind of area, and some of us don't, and that's absolutely fine as well. Not everyone is optimizing to have the big brand name on their CV, and so there's an element of luck, but don't I wouldn't place too much importance on it. If you're genuinely in a role where you're really enjoying it and you're happy and you're learning, then that's a very good place to be in. And so I wouldn't downplay luck, but I wouldn't necessarily focus too much on the fact that you need to be in the right place at the right time as well.
Yeah, I think there's only so much you can predict the future, right? Like sometimes you join an early stage startup and you're convinced they're going to change the world, and that doesn't quite pan out. Sometimes you join one and it's incredible, and you're there 5 years later and you're like, how the hell are there 700 people here? I joined, we were 100. This is not what I signed up for, So it's going to be a leap of faith of whether or not you think that the company is going to be growing at the rate that you're comfortable with and that you're excited about.
So, one of the last questions. So, does a good product leader make also a good entrepreneur? Have you ever thought of going to the startup world yourselves?
I could take this one first. For me, yeah, it's always been a long-term goal of mine to potentially start something of my own. But again, it's always a case of like the right timing. When I feel like I'm really passionate about something as well. But it is definitely a long-term goal of mine. Do I think generally that good product leaders tend to also be good entrepreneurs? Generally, if I had to kind of say yes. And that's because a product role is quite versatile, but it's also, in my opinion, probably the role that is as closest to being a CEO without being a CEO as well. I don't necessarily ascribe to the American view that a product manager is a mini CEO. I don't think that is always the case because you don't necessarily always get that level of autonomy to make absolutely every single decision. But I think that there are elements of having to have bigger picture focus, but with kind of the ability to execute on continuous improvement and continuous delivery, and kind of zooming in and out often as well is a really good skill, which good entrepreneurs tend to have as well.
And a huge part of your brand is being the startup woman, or I can't remember exactly.
Girl, yeah.
Yeah, that's it.
Startup girl, yes.
That's right. And I wouldn't have expected anything else. From my point of view, I think a lot of skills are transferable, and Yasmin has already talked about that. For me, it depends on your risk appetite, really. So there's a lot of product leaders that only really join companies that are public, right? That are floating in the public markets, that are product leaders that only love this Series B or C. Personally, that's where I'm most comfortable. Series A, B, or C. I wouldn't really join a seed stage startup. So it really is
Too messy. Too messy.
Not necessarily too messy. It's I think my skill set and my appetite for risk are different. And I think I'm better suited to be a grower of something that already has product market fit than a person that is looking for product market fit. That's just what I prefer to work on, and where my skill set is. But yeah, absolutely. I coach a lot of PMs that want to be a founder eventually, or I coach a lot of PMs who used to be founders, who have tried something and it didn't quite work and are now in product because they felt that that was the full-time job that most closely aligned to what they were previously doing in terms of what they liked doing, and they want to be founders again. So it's part of your own journey, and yes, it's a role that helps you with that, I think.
And I was about to ask that question. So let's take it the other way around about the entrepreneurs being good product leaders.
They are, yeah. They're some of the best PMs I know have been founders before. They're exceptionally passionate, and they are very good and very compelling about talking about the future. Sometimes they're not as strong as being operators, so they're going to be amazing at strategy and maybe not as strong on the day-to-day, maybe slightly less organized as a massive stereotype. But yeah, they make really good PMs, and the reverse is also true, right? So it can go both ways.
Yeah. So last but not least, I know you've already mentioned a lot of books, but let's take it again from the start. Any resources, books, courses, certifications that you would suggest for any product managers out there that will help them and empower them to become actually product leaders? Yasmin?
Yeah, I can go first. So in terms of books, I think Susana's named quite a few already. I tend to like ones where they're not specific on, hey, this is a product book and we're going to teach you about what this product framework or principle is. So I tend to like to read No Rules Netflix, and Shoe Dog, and books where basically they talk about kind of start to growth for a lot of companies, and a lot can be inferred in the way that they approach the product as well. One of the best workshops that I did, although very expensive, but I'm glad that the company paid for it, was by the CPO from Netflix. So Gibson Biddle does this really interactive, cool workshop. The one I went to was kind of over a dinner, so that was really nice as well, but very interactive and very just so engaging as well. Other courses other than mine, there will be another one towards the end of this year. If anyone is interested, please do message me. I tend to steer away from kind of the 5-day, 2-week courses. Because they can be very expensive. You can be paying up to kind of 5-10K for those. And I think that there's an element of practical is always better than going through the theory. And there's only so much theory that a course can go through as well. So I would recommend a course if it does go through a lot of practical exercises, case studies. This is how you pass a technical stage interview, all of which I've included in my course. But there are plenty of other good ones out there as well, and a lot of free ones too. So if for whatever reason you don't have much of a budget, there's a lot of free ones where you can get scholarships as well to attend them as well.
Yeah.
Great.
From my
Susana?
point of view, if you're looking for books, particularly on product leadership, Empowered by Kagan is a must read. Escaping the Build Trap by Melissa Perry is very, very good. There is a book called The Making of a Manager by Julie Zhu, I believe, which is very, very good for just managerial skills in general, like running a good one-to-one feedback, etc. In terms of courses, I've recently met someone who started something called a product MBA, and it's exceptionally practical. Really, really good work there. And then I've literally just changed my name to the name of my website, where I've got more resources, not necessarily my own, but just recommended reading and books and things like that you might find interesting.
Have you attended Reforge?
I haven't, but I've heard very good things from people in my teams. Yeah.
I'm also trying to get Gibson to speak in one of the next Product 360 events. So
you probably qualify for a pro bono participation because it needs to be above a certain size of organization and revenue for him to actually charge. So do get in touch. He's very happy to do like loads of free meetups, things like that.
Yes, we were already in discussion, so we're just trying to find the most suitable date for him because he is busy. Trust me.
Yeah, he's awesome. He's done really well for himself in this new incarnation of his life.
So I think I have already asked some of the questions that I got on a personal message, but let me see if we have any questions from the audience. Oh, yes. So product scene is under turbo mode in Greece. Susana, Yasmin, are you aware of any Greek-founded startup scale-ups? That's a good question. Have you ever heard of the Greek startup ecosystem?
Actually, yeah. There's a startup that I'm following quite closely at the moment called Causally. They're founded by a Greek, half Greek, half German founder.
Half German, yes.
That's
he's
right.
Based in London. Yes, he's a great guy.
Yeah, so that's my only awareness of the Greek startup ecosystem, but they've got quite a lot of people based in Greece at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
And he's, I think he's head of ML. I'm not really sure. His name is Rui. He's half Greek, half Portuguese. You should definitely meet him. He's a great guy. Yasmin, do you happen to know any Greek companies?
Unfortunately, gonna have to pass on this one. I don't, but I'm definitely going to do some research.
There's another one that started in London, and it's a fintech one called Plum Fintech. You might have heard of it. No,
I think
there are various. There are various ones. One leg in the UK, one leg in Greece. Most of the times, the product engineering data teams are here, which is it's cheaper to find talented people, but the ecosystem is maturing, so it gets harder and harder, even in Greece. Okay, so let's.
Thing happened in Portugal where a lot of talent was based there, and it's now a very, very mature ecosystem, and companies started there as well.
Yes, it's a positive thing.
Absolutely, it's pretty cool.
It gives us an opportunity. Perhaps in 5 or 10 years, if someone wants to go back to their countries, there will be options there to actually work in a company and not. But now you have also remote work, so let's move on to the next one because we don't have a lot of time. Commercial acumen versus tech acumen. Which one is more important for a product leadership role in a tech company? Yasmin, would you like to take this one first?
Yeah, no, it's an interesting one. So there are kind of, technical product manager roles that exist in the ecosystem, but I personally always steer towards commercial. So I would expect every product manager to have a commercial level of understanding, commercial understanding of kind of key metrics and operating models. Obviously, tech is you do need that as well, but you need to be able to ask the right questions. I find in the kind of tech domain space. So as long as you compare very closely with your engineering manager or your engineers to understand what it is that you're building and how you need to build it, that's my personal take.
Yeah, I think mine is fairly similar. I mean, if you subscribe to the Kagan 4 risks, the PM owns business viability and value, which are inherently commercial aspects, right? Whereas feasibility is squarely with the engineering lead. So I would say I would over-index on the commercial side in general, but it really depends on the leadership role. So if you're in an ML startup like Onfido, pretty high bar for tech acumen. But if you're in, I don't know, an online marketplace, the unit economics and the business model are going to be far more important than, how do you build a shopping cart technically. So the business acumen is going to be far more important there.
Totally agree. And there's one more. I think we've got time for one more. So product management versus product marketing. How close should these two be for a successful scale up? Susana? Oh, Yasmin. Okay, then. You go,
Sorry.
Yasmin.
I think that if these two are operating in entirely different departments or even not talking to each other, then something is very, very wrong. So these two kind of roles or departments definitely need to be working together incredibly closely. And this isn't specific to the stage of the company as well. It doesn't necessarily have to be for a successful scale up. Any type of company, I'd strongly believe that the two roles need to be working together extremely closely.
So I've just I'm about halfway through the book Loved by Martina at one of the Silicon Valley product group partners, and that's all about product marketing. And the way she frames it is that for product market fit, you actually need two sides. You need the product to be good for the market, and then you need the go to market to support the product. And essentially, where are you going to find those people? How are you going to sell to them? What kind of message is going to resonate, etc. They need to be working exceptionally closely. And actually, Martina argues that the first hire in marketing in a startup should be a product marketeer, not not even a salesperson. Just hire a product marketeer before you get your sales force, because that will set you up for success.
Bold statement.
I know. I love it.
Yeah.
I have strong opinions in this world.
Yes, but you need the founding team to quite understand the value of product marketing.
That's right.
And it's quite difficult, because it comes down to sales and numbers. And if they're trying to raise money, all they need to do is show traction. Anyway, another comment that was interesting while we were discussing about the books and the resources is by Nectarios, who's currently reading the Jobs to be Done playbook, and he found it really interesting. And I have to agree. It's one of my favorite books, to be honest. I'm not. I guess you've also read it, right?
I haven't read it, but I've attended a training by Clayton Christensen, the Harvard professor who came up with Jobs to be Done in the theory. Yeah. So it's a useful reference for thinking about problems.
All right. So I'd like to thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. I think we're on time. Spot on. So thank you again for your time. I really appreciate all your insights. It was a really, really interesting conversation. I enjoyed it, to be honest. And just before we leave and we end the session, I just want to remind that this whole recording will be uploaded tomorrow on our YouTube channel, and you can watch it, because I'm I'm pretty sure this will be one of the most popular and with the highest views from the whole series. Just before we go, would you like to say anything else, Susana, Yasmin?
Good luck. You can reach out to me on Twitter or on my website if you want to chat. I offer 45 minutes of pro bono career check-ins. So if you just want to chat about your career, we can do that. You can get yourself a coffee, and I'll join you from here, and maybe you'll even see my cat.
Yasmin?
Thank you. Really enjoyed it. Thanks for having me. Yeah, as I mentioned, super passionate about helping people get into a product. So you can also reach out to me on my website or Twitter or Instagram. Always happy to grab a virtual coffee.
Great. Thank you so much. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.